The scariest moment of my life wasn't when I broke down. It was the moment I realized I'd been living with a broken mind for years, and everyone, including me, thought it was just my personality. That's the terrifying part. The darkness doesn't show up wearing black. It comes disguised as your habits, your humor, your coping mechanisms. It comes wearing the mask of who you think you are. And by the time you realize it's a mask, you've forgotten what's underneath. I was 43 years old. I was successful. I was working. I was visible. I was the guy everyone called when they needed something. The guy who was always there. The guy who could handle anything. The guy who made people feel better by being strong for them. I was the strong one. That's who I was. That was my identity. Except I wasn't strong. I was broken. And I didn't even know it. I didn't know it then, but I was living in a mental prison built from patterns I didn't choose, but repeated anyway. I was running programs that had been installed so long ago I couldn't remember the installation. They felt like personality. They felt like me, but they were just survival mechanisms that had calcified into identity. I used to think I was emotionally numb. I'd feel something and then immediately I'd feel nothing. It was like there was a dial inside me that I could turn down whenever feeling got too intense. I thought that was strength. Turns out it was trauma. Turns out when you experience enough pain, your nervous system learns to shut down. Dissociation masquerading as peace. I thought I was independent. I didn't need anyone. I didn't ask for help. I didn't let people close enough to hurt me. I called it self-sufficiency. Turns out I didn't trust anyone enough to depend on them because no one had ever shown me that depending on someone could be safe. I was isolated and calling it strength. I thought I was overthinking. My mind was always going, always analyzing, always trying to understand what people meant, what was really happening beneath the surface, what danger was coming. I thought I was just intelligent and perceptive. Turns out my brain was constantly scanning for threat because it didn't believe the world was safe. It was hypervigilance, not wisdom. I thought I was being kind. I was always there for people. I was always the one who knew what to say. I was always the shoulder to cry on. I was always the one who took care of things. I was always the one who made sure everyone else was okay. I called it empathy. I called it loyalty. I called it love. Turns out it was self-abandonment. It was a trauma response dressed up as kindness. It was a way of making myself useful so that people wouldn't leave me. It was a way of controlling the relationship by being so necessary that they'd have to keep me around. It wasn't love. It was survival. I didn't see any of this. I genuinely believed that this was just who I was. That this was my personality. That being strong meant never breaking. That being good meant always being available. That being worthy meant being useful. And then came the night that broke everything open. No crying, no dramatic music, no moment where I suddenly collapsed. Just a conversation, just a moment, one sentence. One sentence that stripped me bare in a way nothing else ever had. I was with someone I trusted. We were talking about something else entirely. I can't even remember what. But somewhere in the conversation, they looked at me, really looked at me, and they asked me a question that I had never asked myself. Why are you so gentle with everyone except yourself? I swear, it felt like a knife dipped in truth. I didn't have an answer, not a real one. I had explanations. I had defenses. I had reasons. But I didn't have an honest answer because I'd never actually asked myself that question. I'd never actually looked at the gap between how I treated the world and how I treated myself. I was kind to people who hurt me. I was patient with people who disrespected me. I was forgiving of people who didn't deserve forgiveness. I was gentle with everyone except the one person who actually needed that gentleness the most, me. And I realized in that moment, sitting there with this person looking at me, that I had spent my whole life saving people from storms I was drowning in. I had built my entire identity around being the strong one, the dependable one, the one who had it together while I was slowly falling apart. That's when the dark realization hit. I wasn't healing. I was hiding behind humor. I could make people laugh, even when I was dying inside. I could diffuse any tension with a joke. I could turn my pain into entertainment and call it processing. Hiding behind being the strong one. I could carry everyone else's weight while I was crumbling under my own. I could be the rock while I was actually sand, hiding behind taking care of everyone else so I didn't have to face myself. As long as I was focused on other people's problems, I didn't have to look at mine. As long as I was solving other people's pain, I didn't have to acknowledge my own. That's the part nobody tells you. Sometimes the strongest looking people are the ones falling apart in ways no one sees. Sometimes the most functional looking people are the ones who are barely holding it together. Sometimes the people who seem like they have it all figured out are the ones who are most lost. And the worst prison is the one you don't even know you're in. I was in a prison made of patterns, a prison made of survival mechanisms, a prison made of the belief that if I was good enough, if I was strong enough, if I was useful enough, then maybe I'd finally be safe. Maybe I'd finally be worthy. Maybe I'd finally be loved. But that prison had bars made of lies. And the scariest part was that I'd built it myself. I'd reinforced it myself. I'd locked myself inside and thrown away the key. I wish I could say, I changed overnight. I wish I could say, that moment was the magic bullet that fixed everything. But that's not how trauma works. That's not how healing works. Healing is slow. It's messy. It's unglamorous. But I started noticing the lies, the dark truths that were hiding underneath the personality I'd been performing. I don't need help. I'm terrified to be vulnerable. I'm terrified that if anyone sees how broken I am, they'll leave. I'm terrified that vulnerability equals weakness. I'm terrified that being held means being trapped. I'm fine. I'm shutting down again. I'm dissociating. I'm disappearing. I'm making myself small enough that no one can hurt me. I don't want to bother anyone. I don't believe I'm worth the trouble. I don't believe my needs matter. I don't believe anyone would choose to care for me if they had a choice. I can handle it. No one ever showed me how to be held. No one ever showed me that asking for help was safe. No one ever showed me that being vulnerable could be okay. These are dark truths, brutal truths, but they're real truths. And the moment I started naming them, the moment I started saying them out loud instead of just living them, something shifted. Because darkness only has power when it's hidden. The moment you shine a light on it, the moment you name it, the moment you stop pretending it's not there, it loses its grip. I started to understand that my numbness wasn't peace. It was prison, that my independence wasn't strength. It was isolation, that my overthinking wasn't wisdom. It was fear, that my kindness to everyone else wasn't love. It was self-erasure. And I started to feel angry, not at other people, at myself, at all the years I'd wasted, at all the moments I'd abandoned myself in service of other people's comfort, at all the times I'd made myself small so that someone else could be big, at all the pain I'd endured silently because I'd been taught that speaking about it was weakness, but underneath the anger was something else. Underneath the anger was compassion, because I started to understand that I hadn't chosen these patterns. I hadn't decided to be broken. I hadn't decided to be afraid. I hadn't decided to abandon myself. These patterns had been given to me. They'd been installed in me long ago, probably when I was too young to have a choice about it. They'd been passed down to me from people who were also broken and didn't know how to fix it. And that's when healing actually began. Not when I tried to be better, not when I tried to be stronger, not when I tried to fix myself. Healing began when I finally stopped trying to fix anything and just started looking, just started seeing, just started being honest about what was actually true. I started noticing the moments when I was hiding, when I was performing, when I was abandoning myself. And instead of just doing it automatically, I started to have a choice. I started to ask, am I doing this because it's true or because it's safe? Am I doing this because I want to or because I'm afraid not to? And slowly, so slowly that I almost didn't notice it happening, I started to make different choices. I started to say no sometimes. I started to ask for help sometimes. I started to let people see me when I wasn't okay. I started to be gentle with myself. I started to believe slowly, incrementally, painfully that my needs mattered, that my pain mattered, that I mattered. There's a concept in trauma work called titration. It's the idea that you can't heal from trauma all at once. Your nervous system can't handle it. So you have to go slowly. You have to dose yourself with your own truth, a little bit at a time. You have to learn to be with the discomfort without overwhelming yourself. That's what I did. I started to sit with my own pain instead of escaping it. I started to acknowledge my own darkness instead of hiding it. I started to be honest with myself about how broken I was, how hurt I was, how scared I was. And here's the strange thing. The moment you stop running from your own darkness, it stops chasing you. The moment you stop escaping your own pain, it stops controlling you. The moment you finally turn around and look at the thing you've been afraid of, it becomes smaller. It becomes manageable. It becomes part of you instead of something happening to you. I'm 56 years old now. That conversation where someone asked me why I was so gentle with everyone except myself, that was 13 years ago. And I think about it constantly, not because I've solved it, but because I understand now that healing is a practice. It's not a destination. It's a constant choice to look at your own darkness instead of hiding from it. The strongest people I've ever met aren't the ones who never break. They're the ones who break and then look at the broken pieces instead of pretending they're not there. They're the ones who feel the full depth of their pain and don't try to numb it or escape it or perform around it. They're the ones who get honest, really brutally honest about how scared they are, honest about how hurt they are, honest about how much they need help, honest about how much they've been running, honest about how tired they are of pretending. Because that's when the prison walls start to crumble. That's when the patterns start to break. That's when healing actually has a chance to begin. A viral truth that people resonate with, the thing that cuts through all the motivational noise and the self-help platitudes. Sometimes the most dangerous place isn't where you are. It's the version of yourself you keep pretending to be. Because as long as you're pretending, as long as you're performing, as long as you're hiding, you're trapped. You're in a prison of your own making, and the scariest part is that the prison is invisible. The bars are made of patterns. The walls are made of lies you've been telling yourself, but once you see that, once you really see it, once you understand that you've been living in a prison, you didn't even know it was a prison, you can never unsee it. And you have a choice. You can keep pretending, keep performing, keep hiding, or you can start to dismantle the prison, one pattern at a time, one lie at a time, one moment of brutal honesty at a time. That's the darker work. That's the work nobody talks about on the highlight reel. That's the work of actually healing instead of just performing healing. It's not pretty. It's not inspirational in the way we're trained to think about inspiration. It's dark and messy and uncomfortable and real. But it's the only work that actually matters. So if you're out there right now and you're living in a prison you didn't even know was a prison, and you're performing a version of yourself that isn't actually you, and you're starting to notice the gap between how you treat everyone else and how you treat yourself, I want you to know that you're not alone in this. And I want you to know that the moment you see it, the moment you get honest about it, the moment you stop escaping it, that's when everything changes. Not overnight, not dramatically, but forever. The darkness you've been running from isn't your enemy. It's your teacher. It's showing you where you need healing. It's showing you where you need to be gentler with yourself. It's showing you where you need to start looking instead of hiding. So look, really look, see the patterns, see the lies, see the prison you've been building and reinforcing and living in. And then one choice at a time, one moment of honesty at a time, start tearing down the walls. That's where real strength comes from, not from never breaking, but from looking at the broken parts and deciding they're worth healing. That's where real freedom comes from, not from escaping the darkness, but from finally being honest about it. And that, in the end, is the only thing that actually saves you.